Hello once again, everybody, and welcome to another Sun Devil Learning Lab session for grade 5 math. Today we're going to be adding fractions with sums greater than 2. I'm going to be your instructor today. My name is Michael Barker, and a lot of you have probably been with me before, so you know the format. We're going to look at, we're getting rid of our area models. We're going to work a little bit with the number line, but today we're going to primarily work on things numerically. Our objective: we're going to add fractions with sums greater than 2. Up till now, we've really only been working with adding fractions that are either less than 1 or between 1 and 2. Today, we're going to work with the somewhat larger numbers. And before we start, we'll go through our usual setup rules. We want to make sure that you're in a comfortable setting with no distractions, no little brothers or sisters running around making noise, no dogs or cats making noise, that you're in a quiet place. If you can't get into a good setting, maybe ask mom or dad to let you into a quieter place, or if they'll help you remove that distracting little brother. Second, I want you to gather any supplies you might need today. Again, you maybe should have a lot of this stuff now. Hopefully you've been keeping a notebook. I suggest a couple of pencils, that notebook, or at least several sheets of paper. Scissors we probably won't use, but a ruler is always helpful if you want to draw number lines, area models. It's just a good thing to have with your pencils, especially in almost any math class. Be sure and use the restroom before we start. And then remember, as usual, you can always pause the video if you need to take a break or if you need a little longer to work on a problem. So today we're going to do a review. We're going to do a quick sample problem. Take a couple of minutes and just this should be old hat to most of you, and I'll go over it with you in just a couple of minutes. And here's our first step. Now that we have 2/3 plus 1/6 plus 3/4. We've got 3 fractions that we're adding, right? We can see that none of them have the same denominator. That means they all have different parts, a different amount of parts in their whole. But we know from previous lessons, we can find the lowest common multiple. And it's going to be 12, right? 3 times 4 will give us 12. 6 times 2 gives us 12. And 4 times 3 the other way also gives us 12. So we can take a quick look at the sample problem now. 2/3, we change the denominator to 12, that becomes 8/12. 1/6 is 2/12, and 3/4 is 9/12. That gives us a total of 19/12, or 1 7/12. I went through this kind of quick because this should be, as I said, pretty much a review sample problem. Most of us should be pretty comfortable with working with numbers like that. If for some reason you're not, you may have to go back and look at one of the previous lessons again. We'll start now with a little different problem. Mr. B was making punch for a class party. He mixed 1 1/3 cups of orange juice, 3/4 of a cup of apple juice, 2/3 of a cup of cranberry juice, and 3/4 cup of lime soda. How many cups of punch does this recipe make? And we'll take a look at it right here. It's just going to be 1 1/3 plus 3/4 plus 2/3 plus 3/4. So again, we have 4 add-ins and a couple of different denominators, but nothing that should really startle or alarm us based on what we've already learned. So one of my first questions is, what is something that we notice right away? Well, one thing we should notice is that 2 of our add-ins are thirds, and the other 2 are fourths. I highlighted that 4/3, 1 1/3 is 4/3, and 2/3, we highlighted them in yellow. And then 3/4 and 3/4 not only are the same value, but they have obviously the same denominator, and those should be easier to add as well. So the next step is we'll take our 2 yellows, 4/3 plus 2/3, and we're going to add them to 3/4 plus 3/4. What that does is at least it helps us break down the fractions so we don't have to break down every denominator and work with really large multiples. So now we have 4 plus 2 is 6/3, and 3 plus 3 is 6/4. fourths. So hopefully you can notice that both of these numbers are going to be greater than 1. And we'll take a look over here on the right now. We can add that our 6/3 and 6/4. Now we need to worry about our common multiple. Our lowest common multiple is going to be 12. So we know we're going to have to break everything into 12ths. 6/3 is the same as 24/12. Be 4 times 3 is 12, 4 times 6, 24. And then 6/4 is going to be the same as 18/12. 3 times 6 is 18, 3 times 4 is 12. And when we add 24 and 18/12, we wind up with a total of 42/12. Another way to look at that now, if we want to break it down even further, as we know we have 12/12 and 12/12 and 12/12. That's 36. And then 6 more 12s is the same as 42/12. And we know then 12/12 is 1, 12/12 is 1, another 12/12 is still 1, and we finally get to our 6/12. We now know that 1 and 1 and 1 will give us 3, and 6/12 is going to be the same as 1/2. Again, your work should all look something like this as you work on these problems alone. And if we want to finally write our sentence, because the problem was presented in a sentence, we should not forget to write our solution in a sentence. This recipe will make 3 1/2 cups of punch. So we'll move on now, and here's problem 1. I'm going to give you a few minutes to try this. You should be able to try this and work on this one on your own. Okay, let's take a look at problem 1. 2 1/5 plus 1 1/5. Wrote the problem out on the board for you because it was just a little easier to show everything that we were trying to do. And we know 2 is going to be the same as 5/5 and 5/5, and we still have to account for our fraction 1/5. So we would express that as 5/5 plus 5/5 plus 1/5. We're going to express 1 1/5 as 5/5 and 1/5. And we also know 5/5 same as 1, 10/5 same as 2, 15/5 is the same as 3. This comes in handy when we want to determine our lowest common multiple. 1 times 5 is 5. 2 times 5 will be 10. And 3 times 5 will be 15. Now, knowing these values is going to help us in the next step when we can do it 2 ways. First, we can say we have 11/5 and 6/5, which gives us 17/5. 17/5 can break down to 15/5 and 2/5. Now we know 15/5, we can look at our chart if we wrote it out, is equivalent to 3, and we still have our 2/5 remaining. So our solution is 3 2/5. I've got 2 more problems here that I want you to try on your own. Tackle them both. The first one, 2 1/5 plus 1 1/2. The second one, 2 4/5 plus 1 1/2. They're going to be a little more complicated than the first one because our fractions aren't like units, but I'm sure you can tackle them and do just a fine job. I'll give you about 5-10 minutes to work on this. Okay, let's take a look at the first one. 2 1/5 plus 1 1/2. Okay, a couple of ways to look at it. We'll look at them both. First, we can add our whole numbers, 2 plus 1, then that leaves just the fractions for us to work with, right? 1/5 plus 1/2. So 2 and 1 is 3. And now we want to add 1/5 and 1/2. And what do we notice? We know that we don't have a common denominator, but we've also been working with these numbers a lot, and hopefully you'll start to recognize that we just need to change to a lowest common multiple, and the lowest common multiple is going to be 10. So we still have our 3 whole numbers. We don't want to lose track of that. But now we know that 1/5 becomes 2/10, and 1/2 becomes 5/10. So hopefully this part of your solution looks like 3 7/10. 3 and 2 plus 5 is 7/10 is what you should have got for that problem. Now, some people maybe aren't quite comfortable with working like we just solved the problem. So there is another way to look at it, and we'll show it to you now. If we go back to our chart, we know that 2 is the same as 10/5, and then we add our 1/5. And then for 1 1/2, we know 2 halves and 1/2 is the same expression. We look next, that gives us 11/5 plus 3 halves. Now we run into the problem, we still don't have a common denominator or like units, but we know again our lowest common multiple is 10. So we change 11/5, multiply everything by 2, 22/10, and then we change everything in the second fraction, 3 halves, to 15/10 when we add 22 and 15, gives us a total of 37. 37/10 is also the same as 30/10 plus 7/10. And we know 30/10 is the same as our whole number 3, and we still have 7/10. If you look, both methods give us the same solution, 3 7/10. So a lot of times it's just a matter of which method you're most comfortable working with. There is no exactly right way or wrong way. You'll get used to one way and you'll want to use it, and eventually, hopefully you'll try and find one that's the most efficient. Saves you some time if you get some longer problems or if you have a number of problems. Let's take a look at our last example. 2/4 plus 1 1/2. I'll show you my worksheet and I'll share that with you, and hopefully it's something similar to what you did. I'll solve it the first way, our first method where we added the whole numbers first, 2 and 1, 2 plus 1, and then we also want to add our fractions, 4/5 and 1/5. We know our whole numbers, 2 plus 1 is going to become 3. And we also know we got to do our little work with 4/5 and 1/2, right? By now we should be saying to ourselves, well, I need a common denominator, and I know lowest common multiple. Again, in these examples, we know it's going to be 10. 2 times 5 is 10. So don't forget our whole number, 3. And then we convert 4/5 to 8/10. And we convert 1/2 to 5/10. So we wind up with 3 plus 8 and 5, 13/10. Or 3 plus 10/10 plus 3/10, which gives us 3 plus 1 plus 3/10, or 4 3/10. We can also take a look at it with another method, our previous method, where we want to break down the whole numbers. Again, if that's a way you're more comfortable working. By now we know that 2 is equivalent to 10/5. And we're using fifths because obviously our fraction's fifths. And 4/5, so we have 10/5 plus 4/5. Our second fraction, we're going to use halves because we're adding to 1/2. So 2 halves plus 1/2. Now we add both units together, we wind up with 14/5 plus 3 halves. And what do you know? Our lowest common multiple again for this problem is 10. So we convert 14/5 to 28/10. We convert 3 halves to 15/10. 28 and 15 is equivalent to 43/10. 43/10 is equivalent to 40/10 plus 3/10 for a final total of 4 3/10. And what do you know? It's the same as our other method. It's strictly a matter of how you're most comfortable working. And now finally, we're going to want to look at our solutions and introduce them to a number line. A number line is going to help us in a couple of methods because it's going to help us estimate where our answer should be, and it'll help us kind of verify to make sure we did the right work. And we'll take a look at our problems on a number line here and see just a second, we'll see where our number should fall. And it's actually kind of a quick method. All right. What we want to look at is our first problem, 2 1/5 plus 1 1/5. Well, we want to look at it on a number line. I use the number line for two tools. It will help me estimate what my solution should look like, what numbers it should be in between, and it can also help me break it down into better increments to work with. Again, first step, we'll add 2. We'll add our whole numbers first, like we did in the previous problem. We have 2, and then we have 1, okay? Now we have to add our fractions. We have 1/5 and 1/5. So when we just go 1/5 and 1/5, we've now gone a total of 2 plus 1 is 3 and 2/5. It helps estimate. We should know that our answer is going to be between 3 and 4 by finding this, and we can be really precise by counting the fifths, and in this case, we know that the answer is 3 2/5. Let's look at another one. Take a minute. I want you to draw this one on the number line, and when we come back, we'll go over it, and hopefully your number line is going to look something like mine. And welcome back. We can look at the number line. We have our issues with 2 1/5 plus 1 1/2. So again, why don't we do our whole numbers first? 2, 1, 2, and 1, we go there. We've taken care of whole numbers now. But look, we can't go a fifth and then a half. We can, but it's a little easier if we break use our lowest common multiple and break our fractions into the same size increments. It's just a lot easier to work with on a number line. So we have 1/5 is the same as 2/10, and then 1/2 is the same as 5/10. So 2/10 and 5/10 was going to wind up being 7/10. But here we'll do them on a number line. 2/10 and 5/10. We still haven't gone. I should have probably put marks in here to show you where the number line breaks up, but we know that all these are fractions smaller than 1. So 2 and 1 is 3, and our 7/10 gets us between 3 and 4 on the number line. Okay, that wraps up our lesson for today. Just leave you with our notes. Our main objective, we want to work on adding fractions with sums greater than 2. I believe we've achieved our objective today. And I'll leave you with just the reminders, and I hope you have a good time off before you start your next lesson. Until I see you for the next lesson, have a good day, and I'll probably see you in a couple.